It was supposed to be just another fun weekend. She had promised her best friend a night out to celebrate the launch of a new project. Laughter, music, and a few too many drinks later, things took an unexpected turn. The night blurred into a haze of neon lights, inside jokes, and spontaneous dares. Somewhere in the middle of that chaos, she found herself standing in front of a quirky wedding chapel, holding a bouquet of fake roses, and staring at her best friend's older brother, the one who just happened to be a cold, brilliant CEO she never really got along with. Everyone assumed it was just a drunken dare, a prank that would make a funny story later. But when the officiant asked if they were ready, he didn't laugh. He didn't hesitate. He looked her straight in the eyes with a calmness that cut through her dizzy state. And he said, "I do." Before she even realized what was happening, the words slipped from her lips too, as if some invisible thread pulled them out. Cameras flashed, their friends cheered, and by the end of the night, the papers were signed. The next morning, reality hit her like a thunderstorm. She woke up with a ring on her finger and a marriage certificate staring back at her from the nightstand. Panic rushed through her veins. This had to be a mistake. How could she explain this to her best friend? How could she face the world? She stormed into the kitchen of his penthouse, still in her party dress, demanding answers. But instead of looking regretful, he was calmly sipping coffee, as though nothing unusual had happened. His expression was unreadable, but there was a glint in his eyes, almost as if he had been waiting for this moment. She shouted about annulments, mistakes, and drunken accidents, but he stayed unnervingly composed. Finally, he said, maybe it wasn't an accident. That one sentence left her speechless. What did he mean by that? Or was this just his dry CEO humor, or was there something more? She didn't know whether to be furious, confused, or terrified. One thing was certain, her life had just taken a turn she never planned for. For her, it was chaos. For him, it seemed like the beginning of something he had wanted all along. She couldn't shake off his words from that morning. Maybe it wasn't an accident. They played in her mind like an echo she couldn't silence. The thought of her best friend's strict, intimidating brother, now her husband, having planned this entire thing felt unreal. How could someone like him, always so calculating, have engineered something so personal and emotional? Her first instinct was to storm out and file for annulment. But when she reached the law office, she realized something strange. The marriage documents were filed flawlessly, every signature neat, every clause airtight. It wasn't the sloppy paperwork of a drunken mistake. It was meticulous. Too meticulous. That's when it hit her. He had prepared for this. Later that evening, she confronted him in his glass-walled office at the towering skyscraper, where he ruled as CEO. "Tell me the truth," she demanded, her voice trembling between anger and confusion. "Did you plan this?" He leaned back in his leather chair, lips curling into the faintest smile. "I don't do accidents," he said simply. "Not in business, not in life." Her heart pounded. Was this his twisted way of controlling her life, or could it be something else? She expected him to hand her a business contract, to propose a deal, but instead, he surprised her. He admitted he had been in love with her for years, quietly watching her from the sidelines, too proud to interfere while she lived her own life. He confessed he used the accidental wedding as the only way to make her stop running, away from the possibility of them being together. She was speechless. This man, who everyone saw as ruthless and untouchable, had orchestrated a marriage not out of greed, not for business alliances, but for love. Yet she couldn't help but feel betrayed. Her choice had been stolen, replaced with his carefully built plan. The days that followed were a storm of emotions. He treated her not like a mistake, but like a wife, pulling out chairs, remembering her coffee order, even leaving handwritten notes. It was infuriating, because every little gesture made her heart soften when she wanted to stay angry. One night, as she lay awake in the enormous bed they now shared, she wondered, was she trapped in the biggest mistake of her life, or had fate simply forced her to face a love story she never dared to imagine? Living with him was never part of her plan. One day she was her best friend's partner in crime, crashing at her place, laughing over silly dramas. The next, she was waking, up in the penthouse of the man her Bestie always warned her about her impossibly serious, overprotective older brother. Every corner of his home screamed CEO life, minimalist interiors, marble floors, spotless shelves. She felt out of place, like a splash of color in his black and white world. And yet, she couldn't deny that he had already started weaving her into his routine. Breakfast was ready before she even got up. Her favorite playlists mysteriously played through the speakers, and somehow her clutter was tolerated in spaces that once looked untouched. But the real challenge came from her best friend. The day she finally confessed the truth, standing awkwardly in their usual cafe, wedding ring glinting under the dim light, her bestie's eyes widened in disbelief. "You did what?" The betrayal on her face was sharper than any scolding. "You married my brother, and didn't even tell me?" She tried to explain it was an accident, that she was still figuring it out herself. But even she didn't fully believe that anymore. Her bestie accused her of ruining their friendship, of stepping into a space she had no right to enter. It broke her heart, but what cut deeper was the way he handled it, calmly, protectively stepping in between the two of them. "This wasn't her fault," he said firmly. "If you want to be angry at someone, be angry at me." That moment left her shaken. She had always seen him as cold, calculating, but here he was, shielding her even from his own sister's anger. And though it created distance between her and her best friend, it created a crack in her own defenses. Days turned into weeks, and the awkwardness of being husband and wife started shifting into something softer. She noticed the way his eyes lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking, how he adjusted his schedule to have dinner at home more often, how he listened, really listened when she spoke about her dreams. Slowly the lines blurred. He was no longer just her bestie's older brother. He was her husband. But with that realization came a storm of guilt. Was she betraying her best friend by falling for him? Or was she simply following the path life had thrown at her? At night, lying in the quiet hum of the city lights, she couldn't help but wonder, was she beginning to love the man she once swore she couldn't stand? Being married to him wasn't just about shared breakfasts and stolen glances at home. It came with an entire empire. He was the CEO of one of the biggest companies in the city, and suddenly, she found herself stepping into a world of glass towers, flashing cameras and boardroom politics. At first, she wanted nothing to do with it. She hated the whispers in the office hallways, the curious stares from employees who wondered why their powerful boss had married the ordinary girl. Some called her lucky, others called her unworthy. The gossip stung, but she tried to ignore it until the day he brought her into a board meeting. She sat there awkwardly quiet, surrounded by men and women in sharp suits. They were discussing numbers, mergers, contracts, things she barely understood. When one director questioned her presence with a mocking tone, she expected him to brush it off. Instead, he placed a firm hand on her shoulder and said, "She belongs here. My wife is part of this company as much as I am." His words silenced the room. That was the first time she saw just how much weight her new role carried. She wasn't just a mistake he married. He was making her part of his world. Still, it was overwhelming. That night, she confronted him. "Why would you do that?" "I don't belong in your boardroom. I don't even understand half of what you talk about." He looked at her with that calm confidence that always made her heart race. "You'll learn, and I want you there, not because of business, but because I need you." Slowly, she began to find her place. She sat through meetings, asked questions, and even surprised herself by giving fresh ideas that no one in the boardroom had considered. He supported her every step of the way, not as a CEO training an intern, but as a husband believing in his wife. But as her confidence grew, so did the tension. Whispers of favoritism spread. Some employees accused him of letting emotions cloud his judgment. Rivals within the company saw her as a weakness they could exploit. She worried that being in his world might actually destroy it. Yet no matter how rough things got, he stood by her side, always steady, always certain. For the first time, she began to see what love looked like, when it wasn't about flowers or promises, but about partnership, trust, and standing together, even when the world doubted them. And in the middle of boardrooms and business wars, she realized something terrifying yet beautiful. She was falling in love with her husband, Life with him was beginning to feel less like an accident and more like destiny. Yet beneath the comfort of shared breakfasts and quiet evenings, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still hidden, something he wasn't telling her. His eyes often carried a weight. His silences sometimes stretched too long, and there were nights when he stood at the balcony, staring out at the city like he was guarding a secret too heavy to carry. One evening, unable to hold back her doubts, she confronted him. "Tell me the truth," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Why me? Why plan all of this? Why not just ask?" For the first time, she saw him falter. The confident CEO, the man who controlled boardrooms with a single glance, looked vulnerable. He sat beside her and finally revealed what he had buried for years. He told her about the first time he noticed her, not as his sister's best friend, but as the woman who laughed without fear, who carried light in rooms he only saw in shades of grey. He confessed that every time she came over to his family's house, he had to pretend indifference, because admitting the truth would risk everything. His bond with his sister, her trust, even his carefully built image. And then he revealed something. That stunned her. He had been quietly protecting her for years. The internship she once got at her dream company. He had recommended her anonymously. The night she got stranded in the rain and a taxi just happened to stop for her. He had arranged it. He had been her unseen guardian, making sure she was safe even when she never knew. Tears filled her eyes. She didn't know whether to be moved or furious. "You had no right," she said, voice breaking. "You should have trusted me enough to tell me." He looked at her with raw honesty. "I was afraid you'd never choose me." For a moment, silence wrapped around them, broken only by the sound of her uneven breaths. She wanted to stay angry, but her heart betrayed her. Every memory she revisited now had a different meaning. The man she thought was distant had been closer than anyone else, always watching, always caring. It terrified her, how much of her life had unknowingly been touched by him, but it also softened something inside her, because for the first time, she realized his love wasn't new. It had been there all along, hidden behind his walls. Still, one question burned in her chest. Was his love selfless, or was it a love that demanded control? The answer could change everything. The truth was out, the secrets unveiled. She knew now that her marriage hadn't been a random accident at all. It was the result of years of silent love, careful planning, and a man too afraid of losing her to risk rejection. Part of her heart softened, but another part still struggled. Had she really been given a choice, or had he taken it away from her? The tension between them grew in quiet, unspoken ways. Some mornings were tender. He'd bring her coffee in bed, kiss her forehead, and remind her in subtle ways how deeply he cared. Other nights they argued, her accusing him of manipulation, him insisting he only wanted to protect her. Love and doubt collided like fire and water, leaving her restless. Her best friend still hadn't fully forgiven her. Their once unbreakable bond was cracked, fragile. "And you don't see it," her bestie said one night, tears in her eyes. "He controls everything." They even knew those words echoed inside her, fueling her fear. Was she losing herself in his shadow? Or was she simply afraid to admit that she had started to want the very thing he had planned all along? The breaking point came during a charity gala. Reporters swarmed them, flashing cameras and asking invasive questions about their accidental love story. She froze, overwhelmed, until she felt his hand slip into hers. He didn't shield her this time. He didn't speak for her. Instead, he leaned close and whispered, "This is your choice. Say what you want. If you want freedom, I'll give it to you tonight." Her heart pounded. For the first time, the decision was truly hers. She could walk away, annul the marriage, reclaim the life she had before. Or she could accept that love sometimes arrives in messy, imperfect ways, not as a fairy tale, but as a storm that shapes you. Taking a deep breath, she looked at the cameras, then at him. His eyes weren't the eyes of a CEO who always won. They were the eyes of a man ready to lose everything if she asked. And in that moment, she realized the truth. Yes, he had planned their beginning, but the ending was hers to choose. She smiled, laced her fingers through his, and spoke clearly for the world to hear. "Accident or not, I choose him." The crowd erupted. Her bestie gasped, and he, her once untouchable, intimidating husband, finally let the weight he carried fall away. His smile wasn't the smirk of a man who had gotten his way, but the relief of someone finally being chosen back. And just like that, what started as an accident became their story. Not perfect, not simple, but real. Happily ever after? Maybe, but for them it was enough.